All right, you guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Ryan Phipps. For those of you who don't know me, it is my current mission to mentor driven young adults to a successful future by using fitness as the gateway. And what we're going to be talking about here specifically today is how to gain lean muscle without gaining tons of excess fat. And you may have typically heard this referred to as a lean bulk, but guys, don't worry. The goal is not to get bulky. It's to gain lean muscle while minimizing the amount of fat one gains when building muscle. Now, the opposite of this, or sometimes, what we hear this kind of referred to when we think about a bulk in typical bulk context is a dirty bulk. And guys, actually years ago, I did a dirty bulk on purpose to learn about fat loss. As you can see right here, I gained fat on purpose again to learn about fat loss, but I really achieved this by eating everything in sight. And, the outcome was extremely unfavorable. I gained way more fat than muscle as expected. And, that's partially why I'm sharing this with you today, because I do not want you guys to, make this same mistake. Although it was intentional, the outcome will potentially be the same for you. And something that I want to note here too is I was still working out the same amount. I was training the same amount here as I was here. Now, obviously, it's not necessarily reflected in my physique, but I was actually, I was stronger here again. So I'm sharing that part with you because I really want to emphasize the importance of the nutrition of this approach to bulking, so to speak, or really just gaining muscle. And, assuming you're watching this video because you want to learn how to do it, the right way without gaining tons of excess fat, like I did there. So moving on, what does a successful lean bulk actually look like? Well, I want to use some of the hardworking young adults who've been through my program before as examples for, what a successful lean bulk looks like. So to start off with, meet Peyton. So before she joined the program, she was afraid of getting bulky, right? Again, she didn't want to, just get big and bulky. She wanted to build her glutes, gain lean muscle in certain areas. When Peyton joined, she was driven for success. So she followed, everything to a T. And as a result, she became an advanced level lifter. She gained visible lean muscle without gaining excess fat. And she's become a role model for what a lean bulk can do for females. Moving on, meet Andrew. So when Andrew first joined, he wanted to gain strength. He wanted to gain lean muscle, and he wanted to appear more vascular. Andrew was able to gain 15 lean pounds. He added 150 pounds to his bench press in under 3 months. And as you can see, he clearly has, veins going crazy. It's a really cool thing to see, young adults be able to take these concepts and apply them and see visible change. Moving on. So Erin, when Erin first joined the program, she had a poor relationship with food. She was afraid of unhealthy weight gain, and she wanted to see lean muscle growth in her glutes and in her back. After going through the program, Erin has a healthier relationship with food. She's welcoming lean muscle gain and has absolutely made noticeable results without gaining excess fat while being able to eat more. Or Lucas. So when Lucas joined, he wanted to gain 10 lean pounds. He wanted to build a stronger mindset, and he wanted to see upper body growth. And he actually ended up exceeding his goal, and he gained 13 lean pounds. He built a strong mindset, and he saw upper body growth without gaining excess fat. So now what I want to do is go over 3 common mistakes to avoid when we're trying to gain lean muscle. And the first one is going to be going into that quote unquote bulk mode or doing a dirty bulk. And, again, we do not want to just start eating everything in sight just for the sake of, oh, it has calories in it, because again, we will gain way more fat than muscle, which is not favorable. And, something as well that I really learned in going through this process for myself is not only is this stage unfavorable, but when you want to cut back down, whether you want to do a cut, in a typical cut is just a fat loss phase where we kind of lean out. It's going to make that process way less enjoyable. You might need to diet for longer. You might need to diet harder. It's just going to make, the future and kind of screw your foundation up to the point where, it's just not enjoyable to go through, the seasons of athleticism, as you might know it with the typical cut and bulk cycles, etc. And again, the mindset to avoid here is just, I'm bulking, I can eat whatever I want. It's a bad idea for most. And I say most because, there are those of us who have a harder time gaining weight. Maybe you're in your late teenage years, you're just super active. You just got a faster metabolism. You can get away with eating a little bit lower qualities. Even then it won't be favorable to just follow the, bulk or the dirty bulk approach because your digestion will just be so poor. But, again, bad idea for most. And I think, that's kind of the point I'm hammering home here. But moving on to number 2 is not lifting or not lifting properly. And guys, we need to lift the weights to build the lean physique that we actually desire. Only doing cardio will not cut it. 2 different stimuluses, 2 different things going on there. Yes, cardio is great. But if we're really trying to, build the leanest physique that we can, it's not ideal. not saying that it's not ideal whatsoever. I don't want to confuse that, but it's not going to be the primary method that we achieve that lean physique with. And a structured training routine that promotes progressive overload is also essential. And that's going to be essential because it's going to help us avoid or actually break through plateaus. Plateaus will happen no matter what. Plateaus are actually welcomed and expected within my program, but we know how to break through them. And just before we kind of move on to the next thing, it's really important to know that muscle growth happens when we break an adaptation that our body has. Yes, we have to fuel. Yes, we have to recover, right? But overall, the main concept that I'm trying to hit home here with this is muscle growth happens when we break an adaptation. And to really illustrate this is this example right here. And, again, going back to kind of the theme, the concept of those plateaus is we need to know the next step. Guys, if we don't know the next step, we'll get stuck in a plateau so easily. And, this right here kind of illustrates the importance of a calculated approach. So, let's kind of say right here, for example, let's pretend that we're really trying to grow our quads and, we're using the squat as an exercise to do that. And we kind of just go into the gym each and every single week. And yeah, we train hard, but like you have no idea how many sets, how many reps you're doing. You have no idea if you're doing the same weight as last week, the same amount of reps as last week. And, all of a sudden that's great. You're seeing progress and then it just stops. Guys, it's because we hit an adaptation. Whether we care or not, our body cares and did hit an adaptation. If we don't know, where that step is, what those numbers are, if we don't know how much weight we usually do, how many reps, how in the world are we supposed to know what to change? It's the same thing with nutrition. If we're just focusing on eating more and, all of a sudden, like it's really great, we're seeing results and then it just stops. But you have no idea, how many calories you've been eating, what your macros look like or anything like that. You've just been focusing on, eating more and you can't really eat anymore. Well, what do? Do you just stop? No, there's just an adaptation. And, again, this just really illustrates the importance of, a trackable custom routine that actually, factors these things into it. Because again, we can see results at first, just by trying to eat a little bit more, being protein conscious. I would really say that's like a beginner, lifter kind of habit or mindset towards progress. But, once you get a couple years of training in, you'll really see that, the same things don't really apply because the results will slow down and you'll need a much more calculated approach. And the third thing is not being aware of the importance of insulin. So, again, this is kind of going to be a little bit more of an advanced topic. This is really something that's going to take you from a beginner lifter to, an intermediate or advanced lifter is, being aware of some of the processes within the body, within metabolism, a little bit deeper than just, oh, I'm just eating more calories. Like I'm just eating 500 calories. So guys, if you want to get someone in position to build fat and degrade muscle quickly, make them insulin resistant. Obviously, this isn't favorable, but individuals who don't optimize their nutrition are more likely to be diabetic, are more likely to be overweight, and have to diet harder. A lot of the time, these are the people who are like, "Oh, I've been trying forever. I've been trying my entire life for this." Most likely, they're pretty insulin resistant, and they're more likely to have sex hormone issues. PCOS for women and ED for men. So obviously, that situation isn't favorable. But guys, if you want to get someone in a position to build muscle and burn fat quickly, we want to make them insulin sensitive. So guys, individuals who optimize their insulin, maintain a lean physique, can utilize food for fuel better, can eat more and recover faster from inflammatory food. They sleep better, they move better, they think clearer, etc. They just have a higher quality of life. Think of that person or those people that we sometimes come into contact with. They're lean. You see them smash a pizza. It's just like, how do you do that? How do you do that? They're more insulin sensitive. That is one of the main parts of that specifically. Yes, genetics play a role, but there are things that we can control. Again, some habits that kind of go along with this side over here. The least favorable side is going to be, tons of excess processed foods. Again, it's not just the calories in, calories out thing. There are so many processes deeper than that as well. So guys, again, the third mistake is just not being aware of your insulin sensitivity. Now, generally, this does come into play with bulking, especially when, we're like, oh, I'm just going to eat as much as I can. We think, oh, maybe, I'll gain a little bit of weight. But really what we're doing is we're just, destroying our ability to, process insulin, if that makes sense, or, really hurting the way that our body responds to food over a certain amount of time. So guys, here are some signs that your, insulin sensitivity is diminishing. Excessive fatigue, adipose tissue growth around the midsection right there specifically. As you can see, that was definitely something that I did to myself. And again, I was training. I was lifting. I was doing what I was supposed to in the gym, but it was a big nutritional thing for me where my mindset just shifted to, I'm just going to eat whatever. I want to gain some weight. Again, I did it on purpose. Don't recommend it to anybody, but it didn't change the outcome is what I'm trying to share here specifically. So moving on, lack of progress, lack of sleep. And this can happen again when we expect to gain 30 pounds of lean muscle all at once. We're not going to gain 30 pounds of lean muscle in 2 months. If you gain 30 pounds of scale weight, a lot of that's going to be fat. And again, that's not favorable for reasons we've been going over this whole time. So, again, this can happen as a result of consuming tons of highly processed foods for the sake of calories. This can lead to insulin resistance. So, again, a lot of the time we're like, oh, I'm bulking. Like I can really just slam calories in, but we're just making ourselves, insulin resistant, which is not ideal, especially if you're trying to get lean and stay lean. So now I want to go over how to, really gain lean muscle the right way without excess fat gain. So again, it's a step beyond your typical 300 to 500 calorie surplus. Yes, being a surplus is essential for most lean bulks. I'm not here to, debate the laws of thermodynamics or anything like that, because obviously that is important. That is a part of it. And everybody knows that, if you're into training or, even just looking into training, surplus calories, surplus, we all know that. But the step beyond that, where it's really going to take your physique to the next level, is timing and food quality. That is extremely important. So, this is kind of a great example right here is, you can gain the same amount of weight from eating 500 calories of McDonald's and 500 calories of high quality food, but you will not gain the same amount of muscle from both of those scenarios, which is something I find that is often overlooked, in the typical bulking approach. But anyways, where to start? So, on the right here, just for reference, we have a weight chart of an athlete who went through a successful lean bulk with me. But where to start? So we start with a maintenance phase. And guys, after the maintenance phase, the main lever of the surplus, or where the surplus should be added to first, is going to be in our pre and post workout meals around the training window. So guys, again, the maintenance phase was right here. As you can see, weight stayed relatively the same. And obviously over time, we were able to build lots of steady lean muscle over time. So, again, the approach here wasn't just eat big, wasn't just, eat whatever you want. Like, let's just slam calories in all day long per se. It was definitely a little bit more calculated than that. So guys, once and only once maintenance has been established is when we'll move on to step 2. And, step 2 is going to be diving into which macro to increase first. So guys, once maintenance has been established, the next step is to increase carb intake around the training window. Carbs are our body's primary fuel source. And, really what this leads to is going to be the fact that, increasing carbs in the pre, post, and intra workout meals are essential. So again, this is kind of when we first started to notice that muscle gain, is when we upped the carb content in those meals specifically. So guys, step 3, once your pre, intra, and post workout meals have been added to over time, we move on to the other meals and other macros. Because excessive carbs, pre-workout will mess up insulin sensitivity again and cause blood sugar to crash, which will not be favorable. Kind of the extreme example I want to use to illustrate this here is, yes, at first we want to add carbs to that pre-workout window, but obviously, it's not going to get to the point where you're eating like 10 loaves of bread, and that's going to be the most optimal or best way to do that. Again, that'll lead to insulin issues and blood sugar crashes. So, in step 1, we increase carbs enough to fuel your performance first, the meals around training. And again, emphasis on fueling performance, because it really is a positive feedback loop. Just thinking about it without diving too deep, if we're training better, we're having better sessions, we're able to create more stimulus for growth or whatever it is that we're looking for out of the gym, which, means assuming that we're eating the way that we should, we're going to see more results, which, is going to motivate us to do that even more. So it's just a positive feedback loop if we can have higher quality sessions of training throughout time. That absolutely will equal results. And, that's not something that should be too controversial there. So moving on to other macros, when to add fat. So, if we only add carbs, again, eventually our insulin will spike and crash. Fats are not our main fuel source, however, so we don't just want to add fats in the beginning just for the sake of calories. The role of fat is to slow the rate of digestion. So guys, when to add fats, here's some kind of questions to ask ourselves, and some questions that, I kind of consult my athletes with generally. in this process. So, how is our performance? Can we handle more carbs first? Again, if our pre-workout meal hasn't really been added to that much, appetite is pretty good in terms of that. Like we would add more carbs there first before saying, let's just load up fats for the sake of it, knowing that they're not our body's primary fuel source. Another question, how is appetite? Would more carbs be too much food to finish? Kind of what we just touched on. If we're eating a crazy amount of carbs before and it's just not realistic to get any more in before we train, or maybe it would hinder, digestion or anything like that, obviously we'd move on to other macros, other meals. But will adding extra fats hinder digestion? The example I want to use here is, maybe you've done this before in the past where, you've had something pre-workout that maybe, just didn't agree with you, kind of felt like, you're going to like shit your pants the whole workout, and it just leads to a super low quality session. Like obviously that's not a good spot to put those fats pre-workout, knowing that you have to go and perform. So, these are all kind of important questions to ask yourself or ask an athlete when, you're consulting and really looking to optimize this approach again. So protein, again, kind of moving on from fat, going on to the other macro protein. So the main fuel source in this phase is carbs. Again, emphasis on that in our growth phase, in our lean bulk, whatever you want to call it. In the phase we're talking about where the ideal outcome is gaining lean muscle while minimizing the amount of fat. It's going to be primarily done through carbs, and carbs secrete insulin, which is muscle sparing, which is why, when we're in a deficit, protein takes a higher priority. This is because, again, when we're in a fat loss phase, a deficit, we have less insulin, which means we have less protein sparing insulin in our body. And muscle is at risk for breaking down. So, in a surplus, protein actually takes a secondary role, though. Protein takes a secondary role of importance because more carbs are present, which means more insulin is present, which means muscle is less likely to be lost. So just again, that kind of speaks to the importance of carbs first, and just kind of gives you a little bit of insight on protein's role in this process. So guys, I want to say thank you for your time. Again, if you're a driven young adult looking to, build fat and burn muscle, really, have a successful lean bulk, feel free to fill out the form in the description of the video for a chance to work with me one-on-one and, achieve a transformation just like all of these role models right here. I want to say thank you for your time again, and I'll see you next time.